Did Bryan Turner actually say to his boss, take this job and shove it and find a new career? We're going to find out on this Taking Off podcast. Hello and welcome to the Taking Off podcast. I'm Dan Milliken. We're going to be talking with Christy via phone. We're going to talk with Bryan Turner here in our amazing world headquarters studio. But so for those that don't know, Bryan Turner is from Just Plain Silly, and he really has taken his old job and shoved it away to somewhere else and is trying to do the switch careers over to the airlines. And is it too late? Is the pilot shortage over? We're going to find out on this episode. Bryan, thanks for being here in studio.
Thanks for having me, Dan. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, well, you happen to be multitasking because your old job that you took and shoved is IT, and I'm having IT issues here at my production company, and you're here helping me.
I got a lot of free time on my hands, so I came up yesterday and broke Dan's network, and so I'm here today to try to fix it.
Yeah, actually, he was not on the schedule to be here today. And via phone, Christy, laughing. Christy, thanks.
Hey, yeah. Hey, and Bryan, for the record, I took my old job and shoved it and went into aviation.
That's my job took me and shoved me. So
yeah, who's doing the shoving?
Yeah. So I've been an IT guy for 24 or so years, and I worked at my last company for 5 or 6 years. And due to a lot of factors, it was kind of poorly run towards the end, and they went out of business. And so in that time that I worked there, my skills atrophied a little bit. So I said, I need to study in order to do IT stuff. And I started studying it, and it bored me. So I said, if I'm going to study, I'm going to study flying. So just taking a shot at it to see if it works out.
Okay. So, go ahead, Christy.
I was going to say, we're doing some studying. We're trying to beef you up on your skill set because you are legitimately thinking of making this jump into the professional piloting world.
Yes, I am extremely lucky to have a network of people that are guiding me and helping me through this journey, because it is new, and I'm not a spring chicken.
Guiding and helping, is that another word for shoving?
Yeah, it's true. That's true. I get phone calls going, I don't know, Christy messages me about 3 times a week saying, how many hours do you got? What's next on your plate? And right now the hours aren't changing much because my plane's an annual. But since I started going down this journey, I'm at 1,431 hours. I've done the airlines quit paying for that ATP-CTP, whatever it's called, ATP-CTP. So I went and took that, which is interesting.
It's not cheap either.
So this podcast is sponsored by Mom and Dad. My parents took me out to dinner one night and said, what's next on your plate? And I said, this course. They said, we want to take care of that for you.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, I know.
That is so nice. Yeah. That's really nice. Well, happy birthday and Merry Christmas for the next 2 years.
Yeah, it was not a small check. I'm very, very appreciative to have. They've got my back too. So took that class. That was I've been in a simulator before, just because I had a friend who worked at Simuflight, but this was before I was a pilot. To actually get in these simulators, we did an 320, the 737, and then an Embraer 145, and it is the most incredible experience. If you haven't been in one of those simulators, their ability to recreate the sensation of actually being in an airline is just amazing.
I've actually done the E175 simulator.
It's freaking real, isn't it?
Oh, it was amazing. And yes, I did land that one perfect.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. You got us on the ground. You know what? You got us on the ground. I'll give you that. Nobody died. Yeah. We walked away, and the simulator is still functional.
Yeah. Yeah. I've heard those are expensive.
Yeah. I didn't crash the simulator. But yeah, that's amazing. It reminds me, have you been on the podcast for Fly the Transition?
I have not.
Christy has a long time ago. I just recently did it, but that one's all about people that are transitioning from like another career or another thing into airline pilots. So,
okay.
We'll need to get you on with him. He's great.
Okay.
Okay, so you've gotten your ATP, which was an expensive course.
Just the written.
So. ATP-CTP.
Yeah.
I was going to say, he doesn't have his ATP yet.
Yeah, if we come up against the 2-year mark, Bryan's going to go take his ATP check ride in a Seminole or something.
What does CTP stand for?
Yeah, Christy.
What does CTP stand for?
I always forget it.
The CT, I always forget what it means. It's like CTP is like what do you call it? I know ATP is obvious. It's like the course, the transition course or whatever to get you your written.
Okay. All right. For everybody that's listening to the podcast on YouTube, leave a comment. Let us know what CTP means.
I forget. It's like
It's airline transport. I know it's airline transport pilot. It's the ATP part, and then certification training program.
Oh, there
CTP.
you go.
I always get them
Certification training program.
And that class,
then
I'll
the company is ATP, giving the ATP for your ATP.
For me, you can. There's a bunch of different companies that do it. I did it through ATP.
Yeah. Okay, so what's next?
What's next is
For that person out there that wants to write you a check.
Mom and Dad, if you're watching. So like I said, I'm at 1,430 hours. The kind of go-to number is 1,500. That's what everybody wants before they're going to talk to you. But a lot of people will bring you in early, knowing they're going to give you time in the simulators while you finish that.
Because you're going to get 50 hours, right, Christy?
You get at least, you get 40 to 50 hours in the simulators, including through the ATP-CTP course. So you usually get around 40 hours in your actual airline training, plus you get 10 hours of loggable time in the ATP-CTP course. So between that Airbus simulator, the 737, and that E145 simulator, Bryan, you better have logged that.
I did.
Okay,
Yeah.
excellent. So does your 1431, does that include that 10 hours of sim time you got?
I'm not 100% sure. I know I've logged it towards the ATP hours, but I still don't know you can clarify if you want. I know it can go towards the ATP hours. I don't know if it can go towards total time.
It can go towards your total time, yes.
Okay. Then I need to
because we have people that will start training, and this is why you can't start airline training until you have at least 14. I think usually it's around 1460. They'll get people in that ATP-CTP course at 1450. I know when I started with the airlines, the number was like 1464 or something, and you could start because you were going to log all the rest of that time, and they had like a few buffer hours there as well. So as long as you had like 1460 hours by the time you started your ATP training with the actual airline, you were good to go because that time was loggable towards your total time of 1,500 hours.
Okay, so next.
So you have 1441 is what I'm hearing.
I think so.
So you're about 15 to 20 hours shy of what you need.
Yeah. And
Okay.
so my plan.
Bryan doesn't know it yet,
Uh-oh.
but I plan to take him and just go like destroy him with instrument approaches in the Warrior. He doesn't realize it, but we're So you're learning
he's
today
for an IPC anyway. So
Yes.
Well, no, and so that's the plan. Bryan, congratulations. I'm about to take you up. But we're going to wait, and we're going to do it like in the evenings when it's not 106 degrees outside.
It's 109 today. What are you doing in an hour?
Well, I was having PTSD flashbacks to our multi-engine training last year.
Every check ride.
Oh my
gosh.
gosh.
August.
So August in Texas is the check ride month, a national check ride month.
4.
So do you have to have, what's the check ride for the ATP like? What's that step like?
Christy's going to have to answer that. What's been told to me is it's very commercial centric, but a little more precision, but you know more than I do.
Go, Christy.
There are so there's two different ways to get your ATP check ride done. You can go get a multi-engine airplane and just go do an ATP check ride, in which, yes, you're going to have to go through the ACS, because I don't think it's the PTS anymore for that, but it's going to be to those ACS standards. If you're with the airline, 90% of the time or so, the airlines are using AQP, which is basically like they're going to train you to proficiency for airline specific maneuvers. There's usually two parts so your actual check ride in the airlines is called your LOE, your line observation evaluation. But there's also another qualifying event, usually right before the LOE, and that's called your MV, or your maneuvers validation. That's where you're going to go up and you're going to do a bunch of these maneuvers in the simulator that you would kind of think about, that's what a check ride should be, even though that's not technically your check ride. The maneuvers validation usually consists of things that we're going to see realistically in the airline world, or possibly realistically, rejected takeoffs. Takeoff, and you get like a single engine, takeoff at V1. We call those V1 cuts, You're going to go up and you're going to do high altitude maneuvers and things like, there's a whole list of maneuvers that you do. You're going to do localizer approaches. You're going to do a bunch of emergency maneuvers, including, I need to do no flap landings. That's a big one. There's just a bunch of different, very airline specific maneuvers that we go up and we do during that maneuver validation. Once you pass that, then the next step is to do the actual quote unquote check ride. That's your that's your, IACRA event, if you will, where they're going to go in and put in all your IACRA stuff. And you're just doing a line flight somewhere. You're literally going from point A to B and usually B back to A. But during that second line or that second leg, that's when something's going to happen. And again, it's a very realistic thing. Oh, we had a pack failure. When we already had another pack in off, or we had an electrical emergency, or we had an IDG failure, something like that. And you're going to have to work together as a crew with your sim partner to go through the QRH and figure out what to do. What's the best course of action? Do you need to declare an emergency and divert, things like that. But they prepare you really, really well for those checking events. But that's how you would do an ATP check ride, essentially, with most of the airlines. Some of the airlines actually still use the ATP standards.
Okay.
But not my airline.
So, changing from that, like you and probably Bryan will end up doing then your ATP check ride he'll do it through the airline, most likely. Because I feel very strongly he'll get the job at that one that we're hoping. What about like for somebody like me? And my situation is I don't plan to go to airlines, but I enjoy the challenge and the training that comes with preparing for a check ride, and so I've become a bit of a ratings collector.
And you did just get a first class medical, so now, Christy, if you want to push 2 people.
Yeah, actually, just for
Dan, how many hours are you at?
I'm at 16. So,
do you have all of your ATP qualifying hours, all of the instrument time and nighttime, et cetera?
The nighttime, yes. Instrument, yes. I think when I was looking at it, because I thought, what the heck? What if I get my ATP? But then that real expensive course scares me. Like, there's got to be a different way, because one of the qualifications was taking this an ATP course, and so that's scaring me. But also, I think there was some. Is there like multi-time is what I lack, and I can't remember if the ATP requires a certain amount of multi.
50.
Yeah, 50. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, you have to get 50 hours. But if you were going through the airlines, for example, you would only need 25 because you can use that simulator time. So we talked about that earlier. That simulator time counts as multi-engine time towards your ATP.
Yeah, so right now my multi-engine time is my multi-engine check ride for my commercial add-on and my flight with the pilots had fish, not steak, on that episode when I was in the sim. That's my multi-engine
Don't you get a friend
time.
that owns a multi-engine plane in Colorado?
I do, and we have talked about it. I just need to get around to flying with him, and I may in the next couple of weeks do some, but because I want to build that. But so I think that the only thing I lack is that course and my multi-engine time.
Right. Yeah, you have to do the ATP-CTP course before you're allowed to take your ATP written exam.
Yes.
And as you know, you have to have your written exam done before you can go to the check ride. Now for you though, since you're not going to the airlines and you would just be bankrolling this yourself effectively, that's where that first option I mentioned comes into play, where you would just get all your time, your multi-time and everything else you need for the ATP. You would do the ATP-CTP course, take the written, study and prepare, get signed off by a CFI that's qualified to sign you off for an ATP check ride, and then you would just go up with a DPE. But you would have to go and do all of those maneuvers listed in the ATP ACS to ACS standards in the actual airplane.
It would have to be a multi-engine.
It would.
And it would have to be.
Oh, hold on, Christy. Hold on. Okay, go ahead. What did you say, Christy?
Oh, I said you would probably wind up doing it again, just knowing you. So just keep that in mind.
I'd want to do what again? It broke up.
Oh, you would have to, I said you would probably wind up, knowing you would wind up doing your ATP check ride at a multi-engine in August sometime.
Right.
So just keep that in mind.
So I got a year to go on
ATP
that.
standards.
Yeah,
Right, exactly.
I've got a friend who went ahead and did his ATP check ride. There's
For the heck of it?
For the heck of it. He's working towards a career, but he wanted to just get it done. And it's about the same price as the class to join a program where they say, we're going to train you on the maneuvers and give you a DP to do this check ride. So it's
Well, I can
not
get
cheap.
a DPE. I guess what I want to know for the audience out there, leave me comments, is what is the least expensive ATP-CTP option out there?
The one I took, I sorted by price.
No, that was too. I'm not.
They're all about the same.
No. Just talk to my parents. It didn't cost me a penny. Dan.
Okay, I just.
Oh my God,
can you
stop
introduce
it.
Me? Yeah, so that's going to be probably the biggest obstacle. Is I don't want to pay that money.
I saw them. The ones I saw online ranged from about 4,600 to about 6,500.
Yeah, that 5,000 average is just too.
That's a lot of money.
I don't have that kind of money to just say, oh, let's just go ratings collect. Here's $5,000. I can't do that.
Well, honestly, here's the thing, Dan. I mean, I get the ratings collection thing. It's kind of what I wanted to do with my seaplane rating, but
Right.
I just realized that, like, logistically, I would wind up spending $2,000 or $3,000 plus the cost to actually travel somewhere to go get the seaplane rating to then like never be able to fly a seaplane.
Yeah.
It's not like there's seaplanes around that I can go rent. I'm always going to wind up having to be with the CFI anyway.
Right.
As much as I would love to do it, that's kind of if I win the lotto kind of frivolous rating.
Well, I think that what I'll do is I'll keep moving forward. I'll work on my multi time. I'll do all that. I'll try to check every box I can.
Get your MEI.
Yeah, I will get my MEI. I plan on doing that. Yeah, and I want to get my glider. I actually need to finish my tail wheel. I've come close. I just need another ride or two, and I'll have the tail wheel. And I do want to get to seaplane as well. You and I, Brian, have talked about that as well.
This is all GA pilots talk about is things we want to do that are not practical. Like I want my seaplane rating, but I'll never use it. But I want to go to Alaska.
Right, same.
You know, go somewhere fun and get it. But at the same time, I don't know when they expire, but like I would use it just for the training. I would never use it again. But it sounds like it's just
right. Well, Brian, that's what so I went up to Alaska. We went up to Talkeetna a few years ago, and we flew seaplanes, and I got some really good like training, I guess you can say, with a CFI up there. I didn't do the course. I basically just paid for like however many hours plus the CFI time, and it was a blast. And I got to log the seaplane time. I just didn't spend like $3,000 on the rating or whatever. And that's effectively what I figured I would do. Now, again, it could be one of those things where in a few years I might just bite the bullet and do it. Getting my glider rating, now that is something that is practical and I can use in my everyday flying.
Yeah.
So I would definitely love to get my glider rating if anybody out there in the DFW area knows of a really good
Well, everybody points to the
glider
people
school
that Brian went to in Waxahachie.
Yeah.
So
I love
Gotcha.
flying with them. I fly
Yeah.
with them. They're awesome.
You know, I wish I could, because the little bit that we've done gliders, you're there, Christy. It sharpens your stick and rudder skills immensely. It's just amazing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Everyday flying, like that would 100% be worth it. Now, if we had somebody that was like, we'd love to have you guys come down. Like if me, you, and Brian went down to go get our seaplane rating together. I think they do it in Austin or something, right? Or somewhere down there.
There's all sorts of places. There is a place in Austin, and I talked to them briefly about it. There's also a place in Lake Michigan up on the Upper Peninsula. And
I mean, if it was something where the three of us could
just,
if the three of us could go and do it together, if the three of us could go do it together and it was like a group thing, and I don't know, maybe to me at that point it would definitely be worth it.
Well, and if it's just one of those ratings that if I'm never going to use it, it needs to be Alaska, Michigan. It needs to be an adventure. I don't want to get it in Texas. I don't want to try to have fun in this state.
Or do Texas, Houston in August. That's
no.
I can get the time off. Yeah, right. Exactly. I can get the time off for it if I have some advance notice.
Okay.
Like that's the thing is like if I have a couple of months to like plan it and request the time off and maybe take some vacation time or something, for that I could probably do that. It's usually when you're like, hey Christy, next week we're gonna go do whatever, and I'm like, hey, I got a trip. sometimes these like last minute things will pop up and I'm just not able to coordinate my schedule.
So let's plan Alaska in January for a seaplane.
Yeah, that seems like a really good idea, Dan. Yeah, the opposite problem.
Right, yeah.
Ski plane rating, I think, is what it would be.
So,
oh my gosh.
But yeah, I went in for my medical. I was redoing my class 2, second class, so that I can, CFI and all that kind of stuff. You have to at my age, you have to renew it once a year. But it's good for 2 years. It reverts to a third class. Anyways, so I went in to redo my second class, and just for the heck of it, I was like, well, what's in addition for a first class? And mainly it's the EKG. And he's like, do you want to do that? And I was like, well, okay.
Sure.
And so, yeah, I passed my first class.
Never anything wrong with knowing more about your health either.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of what I took away. And so for the next 6 months, I've got a first class.
Let's get you a job, Dan.
Yeah, I have to go get mine every 6 months because apparently I'm a medical threat.
That's right.
You would just instantly, when you turn 40, you have to go every 6 months if you want to exercise your PIC privileges, basically. But in the airlines, they tell you get it every 6 months. So I've been getting it every 6 months since I turned 40.
So I guess
Brian, you got yours, right?
Yeah, I got mine the same day Dan did, actually. I do mine every 6 months.
I think that,
Gotcha.
I guess you guys have to have the AME on speed dial for the airlines. I mean, you pretty much are going there all the time, it seems like.
Every 6 months.
That comes up fast.
I went ahead though because I have to go every 6 months. I went ahead and made him my primary care doctor. So I went in there and gave blood work and I'm going to be here every 6 months. May as well just check everything out. So
interesting.
I was going to say that. So there's pros and cons to doing that. Most people would say don't do that. Keep it separate. I have a separate primary care doctor from my AME. So that way, if anything ever pops up, like I can work with my primary care doctor to resolve it and then discuss it with the AME at the same time I'm getting my medical done or whatever. I've never had any health issues, but
is your AME a pilot?
He is an aviation enthusiast. He was a student pilot, but he actually never finished his ratings just because he got busy as a doctor.
Okay.
Mine's a pilot. And he's also in the National Guard and is a flight surgeon for a unit. So that's pretty cool. All right.
Yeah, I just use my AME because of proximity reasons, honestly. And he's a really great guy, and I've been going to him for the last couple of years. So.
Okay, so Brian, you're trying to make that transition.
Yep.
We've talked about really basically training your credentials. What's next as far as not training your credentials?
So
interviews?
This is a tricky time. I've been saying for the last 6 months, I'm like the guy in the movie just trying to get under the door before it closes. And I don't know that the door's closing. So I'm going to be pretty nebulous with how I speak about this, but I have been contacted and I have a meeting with a professional flying organization. I'll leave it at that. They have slowed down. The phrasing to me was we're prioritizing cadets over people off the street,
Yes.
But they are still hiring, but they have completely reduced the number of classes. My understanding is some airlines, the group I'm particularly talking about, have delayed them until next year. So, and even my discussion with them is several months away. So, which it's bad because I don't have a job, but it's good because I've got time to sort of, what am I walking into? What do I need to do to prepare? And I'll tell you, they sent me an email and said, hey, we're interested in talking to you. And I had a panic attack in my head and went in the bathroom and shaved. I was like, I know I can't. I can't have face.
Well, I think, Brian called me and he was like, oh my God, I got this email. And then he was like, I'm going to go throw up and then I'm going to shave. And I was like, Brian.
I did. And so I was like, I have not seen the bottom half of my face in probably 30 years.
So it was good to know that
it was just all white.
You haven't had any other panic attacks because you've got it coming
now
back.
I'm growing all the gray out. So I did. So I was like, okay, I can't be the mustache guy. Like the ATP class, it's all these young, fresh faces.
You did send me a picture.
I did.
And I'll post that right now.
God. But I knew I just couldn't. I'm going to do a whole video about possible shaving patterns. But yes, I did. I went in and I was like, okay, I need to know. So I did, but I did an ATP course and everybody looks like, no offense, I looked a certain way when I was young too. But everybody there looks like they've got the mustache and they're 25 years old and they're CFIs or whatever. And I was the old guy in the class and I was like, I just can't, but I got to know. So I shaved everything except the mustache, and then I sent a picture to my wife, and she said, absolutely not. And then I shaved.
I immediately put you on my do not fly list when you
Yes.
sent me that picture.
Then I shaved the rest of it off, and I sent my wife a photo of me with no beard, and she goes, "Why you send me a picture of your father?" My kids are like, "Oh my God, you look just like Grand. I look a lot like my father."
Oh, wow.
Especially with that facial hair. And so, for about a week and a half, I walked around the house, and they're like, "It's going to take some time to get used to." And I was like, "I don't look in the mirror right now." But so that's probably the most traumatic part of all of this.
I guess if you pass or whatever, you're going to just shave your head.
I don't know. We'll try to get the rules changed. But so anyway, that was the first thing I did. And then, my expectation is that if I go have this conversation and things go well, that if there's an offer, it'll be sometime next year. So I do think things have slowed down, but I don't think they've come to a screeching halt. I've heard, and Christy, you know more about this than I do. I've heard there's airlines, fractionals, regionals that have stopped, and there's some that are furloughing, and there's some that have gone from 4 classes a month to 2 classes a month. Everybody's doing different combinations of this type of stuff. I don't think it's shut down, but I guess the optimistic or positive, the people I were talking to said we anticipate hiring like crazy first or second quarter of next year because they were purchasing airplanes.
I talked to a guy in higher up in one of the regionals who is like the lead guy for hiring. And I asked him, is the pilot shortage over? And his response was, there was never a pilot shortage.
Oh, explain that. Because you hear about that on the internet.
Oh, I know. And I need to have him on the show, and I will, and we'll talk about it. But because he can obviously explain it a lot better. He just felt like there never was. They had the people in the pipeline and everything else. That never really was a shortage. So, because I was also wondering, there's other airlines that are facing contract negotiations with their pilots and everything else. So, are they crying? They're laying people off because it's a tactic. In the pilot negotiations, I've heard that. I've heard all sorts of things. So, I do, in talking to some different people, I do feel good for you in that with all the news of furloughs or whatever. I feel very good for you that you are going to get an airline job. In talking to them, I got the impression that you're in.
Okay.
So, I think it's still not too late. So I think you did slide under the falling door, and you're grabbing your whip and hat.
The door.
Yeah, don't forget the fedora.
I would say I agree with most of everything that's been stated. A lot of the slowdown has happened at the mainline carriers. So we're talking about American, Delta, United. You can even put FedEx and UPS into that category. Right. When they started slowing down, then the problem that was happening with the quote unquote pilot shortage is that it takes a really long time to train a pilot.
Sure.
From the time you source somebody from an application, that whole process probably takes anywhere from 4 to 6 months when you're talking about background checks, getting them in their class state, doing the ATP-CTP, actually getting them to start classes. Once they start classes, it's a good 2.5 month training, and then they've got to get get on the line and that. So by the time they're actually flying, from the time that you source them from their application, again, 4 to 6 months. And so people were coming in, they'd get hired at the regional carriers or some of the smaller carriers, even some of the smaller Martin Air or Ameriflight or whatever. They get just enough time to get noticed by the mainline carriers. The mainline carriers had this huge demand for pilots because their routes were expanding. They had all these airplanes coming in, et cetera, especially, post-COVID and all of that. So they were just sucking people up from the regionals. So you'd literally come into the regionals, spend 6 months, 4 to 6 months, getting this pilot trained up for them to only be there for 6 months to a year, and then they'd get sucked back out. So it was just this continuous funnel of pilots going through. Well, now the mainline carriers have really slowed down. I'm not going to say that they've fully stopped, and there's several reasons why. There's a lot of speculation, and it doesn't matter what the reason is. One of the reasons, of course, is the Boeing orders and the Airbus orders and whatever. It doesn't matter what the reason is. What matters is that they don't need pilots right now as badly as they did before. And so they've really slowed down. So they're not sucking pilots out of the regionals like they were previously. Now the regionals have slowed down.
Yeah, and I think that in Bryan's case, because of what you said, that, it can take 6 months to train up a pilot to be ready to go out and start working, that they always have to have a pipeline, even if they're full up because of retirement or whatever. And so, and when you look at it, do you want a 22-year-old or do you want a 40-something guy that's mature and knows life and everything else? As an employer, I think Bryan, you'll move to the front of the line.
Well, I mean, and I'm not going to disagree with that as long as he can pass the interview and then get through the training and stuff, because there's a double-edged sword with that too. Obviously, as you get older, if you haven't been in this industry previously, there's that, are they competent? Can they pass the training, et cetera? And I know several individuals that have gone in that were older than you, Bryan, but they came in older, and they really struggled with the training. They were hired, but they struggled with it. So
I know three that have gone in and either left on their own or been told to leave. So,
wow.
Exactly.
I'm terrified, to be honest.
Well, but that's the thing is that you've got a lot. Oh my God. You've got a lot of support to help you through that. I think you'll be fine, honestly. I really do.
You are such an imposter syndrome guy, and your skills in the cockpit are amazing. I would trust you in Lola, my 210, to go fly alone if you had the hours, and could be covered by insurance. Your flying skills are great.
I appreciate
Absolutely.
that.
No, I agree. And that's why I said, I've flown with you a lot. You are responsible for a good chunk of my logbook, being your instructor and everything. So I have all the confidence in you. I will just say that I agree with the statement about the quote unquote pilot shortage not really being a thing. They had a ton of pilots in the pipeline. Airlines, there's a bunch of regional carriers out there that have cadet programs that always have pilots ready to go in the pipeline. They always do. It's just whether or not that quote unquote funnel. The regionals are effectively like a funnel to the mainline carriers. And the question is, how fast is that funnel moving? And right now, it's a slow drip. People are still leaving. Believe it or not, I moved up 3 seniority numbers this month, which I didn't think was going to happen. And in prior months, I probably would have moved up 15 seniority numbers a month. But this month, I moved up 3 seniority numbers. So there is still a slow drip out of that funnel. It's just a matter of where are these people going, et cetera. And some people leave the industry, they medical out, they do get hired somewhere else, whatever. Bryan, I think you've got a really, really good opportunity here. We just need to make sure that you are beefed up and ready to go, because you got one shot to get in and do this.
Well,
that's the lesson here.
The other thing, and I don't know if this is a good metric or not, but I know what a lot of people do from talking to them is there's a specific website where you can go and see what the retiree numbers are, the people that are going to age out every year, which is fine. And you can see that number continues to grow for the next 3 or 4 years, but you don't have any indication what's in this pipeline you're talking about. So you can say, oh, American's got to hire 900 or retire 900 pilots next year, but they could have 4,000 in the queue. So I think a lot of people say, well, I can see these numbers, I can see these retirees. Fine, but you have no idea what the inflow is. So that's why I think.
Well, and not only that, I would also like to point out that American looks at that and they look at the projections. I mean, they're not dumb.
Right.
They might have 900 retirees next year, but right now they could be 900 pilots overstaffed.
Sure.
But they're not furloughing. They're just like, hey, we're going to hold off on hiring anybody else because we're 900 pilots overstaffed, but we got 900 people retiring next year, so we're going to be flush.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of what they're looking at. They stopped all of their classes for the remainder of this year, saying, hey, we're going to look at what our staffing needs are again toward the end of this year, beginning of next year, and then start up classes again. I think that's actually a pretty reasonable approach because they know they've got so many retirees. They know that, they just might not have to backfill those retirees.
Sure.
So the retirements, that's a good thing. But again, the question is, do they need to backfill those retirements?
Right. It's just that metric gets thrown around a lot when people talk about the pilot shortage.
Right. I hear it a lot too.
Okay.
All right. So my video just died, so we'll go to a still image here for the last little bit. But okay, well, Bryan, we're all
just put the picture of Bryan up with the mustache or whatever.
Yeah, that's what we'll do. We'll put that picture up there for now. We'll close with that. So, well, Bryan, thanks for coming out and sharing time and sharing your journey here. I think you're going to be just fine.
Hope so.
And in the meantime, you're getting all this commercial pilot work. I hear somebody's been, putting you up there and paying you to
there's this
go
guy
fly.
who has me take pictures of highways, sometimes in my plane, sometimes in his airplane. And it's actually kind of fun. I wish it took longer than it did. So Dan had a commercial gig that he handed off to me, and we've done it together a few times. But it's kind of fairly low, close. I mean, we're right in there next to DFW Airport, and it's like it's kind of fun flying.
Well, yeah, and sometimes you get really friendly controller, and sometimes you don't.
Dude, the best.
Oh, yeah.
So the first time I did it solo, there's a process, and Dan's walked me through it. You fill out paperwork. There's some email exchanges. The first time I called up 18.1, I said, "Hey, this is 7420 Papa." They go, "Hey, Mr. Turner, we've been waiting for you," and they coordinated the whole thing. And I was like, "Well, this is lovely." And the next time Dan and I went in, they're like, "What are you wasting our time with this stuff for?" Not, I'm exaggerating, but it was a whole different set of.
Well, you need to talk to Tower. You need to do this, and
I was like, "Oh,
I don't have your paperwork in front of me."
Yeah, I was like, I can't give it to you. What do you want me to do? But it's such an interesting. You don't know what you're going to get. That first time, it was lovely.
Yeah. So
To do that gig with Dan as well, that was really fun and interesting. Because you'd be going down and doing all the video, and then they're like, "Hey, we have a heavy jet departing off Alliance. We need you to 360s out here." And I was like, okay. So we'd be out there just doing 360s, waiting for this heavy jet to roll on by.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's good. So anyway, we're all pulling for you, Bryan. I know we'll keep everybody up to date on your journey, and you'll be in the flight deck of a 121 before too long. I know it.
I do.
All right. Thank you guys for watching and listening. Don't forget our sponsors, Colton Mortgage, coltontakingoff.com, 67 Design, 67D.com, Marshall Protective Services, Personal Protection Elevated, MPSprotects.com, and Z Vision, the brightest
Don't
lamp in
forget
taxi
Flying
lights.
Eyes.
Well, I always kind of save them because we're wearing them. I can't see them now. The camera's not on. But flyingeyesoptics.com. Use our discount code, taking off all caps. One word for 10% off. And I was saying Z Vision. That's xevision.com. I just put some lights on my. You saw.
I've seen them. They are bright. It's like the sun.
It is like the sun on my plane now. So looking forward to.
Don't forget
videos.
Jerry Clemens.
And ClemensInsurance.net.
Yeah.
So if you need insurance, whether it's aviation or otherwise, give Jerry a call. We appreciate you guys listening. Until next time, stay safe.